All right. How's it going?
Hey, can you hear me
Everyone's
all right?
mic's good? Yep. Sounds good. All right. Episode 34, Derivatives for Degenerates. We have Aori on, high performance order book trading infra for options, spot trading, and OTC settlement. We got Josh here. I'm assuming you're the founder. Um, I'm
Yep,
gonna
yep, yep.
assume that. And yeah, so could you just give us the quick intro on your background, how you got to Aori?
Yeah. I'm more than happy. Do they hear us on the spaces? Right? They do.
No. So on the at the pinned tweet on the
Oh, they
Spaces is
join
the
it on that.
live. Yeah,
Gotcha.
but
Forgive
they'll
me.
see
I'm
that you're
I'm
in it.
broadcastingly redacted, so I figured I would just ask. Yeah. So Joshua Baker. My background's in market making. I was a COO of System 9 and options and altcoin market making firm for 3 years, or for a little under 3 years. I built up the options trading desk. Kind of got us started in the DeFi side of options as well. Working quite a bit with altcoins. I think in my time there, brought in around 100 or so clients on the token market making side. So kind of made markets all across DeFi, CeFi, for a lot of different token issuers and a lot of different liquidity environments. Then last year worked on DAMM. That was kind of my first foray into the development side as a Solidity engineer. I was working. Oh, here's the big fix. I was working specifically on building an institutional lending platform, and then grew that to about 50 million in TVL before FTX blew up and kind of made institutional lending like this kind of toxic place to be. But we luckily, ended up winding it down successfully and repaid all the loans. And then, started working on Aori. Aori kind of came about from when, myself and our head of product, we kind of have no titles. We were hacking at ETH Denver this year, kind of throwing around ideas for how we could build, the best order book for the options tokens that we'd been working on for the last couple of months. And we kind of stumbled upon Seaport, which is actually the NFT trading layer for Blur and OpenSea. And you wouldn't think you could actually trade anything but NFTs in it, but it turns out if you go into their smart contracts, they're the most beautifully written smart contracts that exist in crypto, and they allow for the settlement of any two assets or any bundle of assets for another bundle of assets. And so we decided to kind of hijack Seaport and use it for, all of our trading and settlement across all of our asset classes. So, that's kind of the high level. Yeah.
Awesome. And when you kind of first got started, obviously the show's name is Exit Liquidity. So we like to hear a little bit about maybe your kind of experience in the ecosystem, maybe some times that you might have been Exit Liquidity yourself.
Oh, that's pretty easy. I'm pretty much the worst trader of anything that's not NFTs. So every time I trade tokens, like directionally, I get just my face ripped off. So anytime I've ever bought a shitcoin, it's going to zero. I'm never going to win. I never picked Pepe. I never picked Obama, Bitcoin, Sonic Inu 10. I just get destroyed. So I remember even trying to trade some shit coins or liquidity mine on different platforms in DeFi summer, and it just I never managed to LP on Yearn or Compound. I always was LPing on Cream, and just getting killed. But for some reason, the one thing I can trade really well is NFTs. I've top to bottom to Milady's 4 times. And all the derivatives of Milady's, I'm really good at trading. But that's it. Yeah. But tokens, I suck. Tokens, I never listen to me for a token pick.
Awesome. And recently you had a thread that I actually enjoy pretty much, and it was about MEV and flash loans with Scoopy. Could you kind of give the little explain that like I'm 5, but also explain your position as well?
Yeah. So I kind of that thread went pretty viral on crypto Twitter. That was pretty satisfying. That's like my first like real viral thread. I'll give. So Scoopy had tweeted like a pretty normal take. Well, I mean, I'm not dissing it. It's like you have to be really deep in crypto to even get what he's saying. But like he says, and I just pulled it up to make sure I'm getting everything right. MEV is like theft, basically. And I guess the problem I have with that is like, as someone who's like deeply involved in searching on chain and like is doing it, like it's not theft. Like it's not. What it is it's exploitation of stupid protocols for in the ways that the founders directly intended. So like I think a good example of this would be to like compare it to like, if you guys remember Avi, the guy who hacked Mango, what he did was he manipulated price oracles to pump a token 5,000 times, not 5,000%, 5,000 times to then manipulate oracles and then reborrow the entire protocol. That is a multi-legged, complicated strategy where he's directly attempting to steal money from the protocol. What MEV is MEV is stale price arbitrage. That's it. That's like 95% of MEV, depending on whether it's a centralized or a decentralized exchange that you're doing the MEV against. What I mean by stale price arbitrage, this is a very common strategy in traditional finance. A lot of market makers make money doing this, where what happens is they see that another market maker posted, let's say they posted an ask 1% above the price, right? So if the price is 1,000, they posted an ask at 1,010. If this is like Ethereum or something, right? And it's been a while since Ethereum was at 1,000, but let's imagine for round numbers. And let's say that on exchange B, this was all taking place on exchange A. If on exchange B, someone actually market buys and pushes the price up to 1050. So the price has moved up now 5%. But on exchange A, whoever it was, they didn't get the memo. They didn't see that there was an opportunity and that the price had moved. And so a market maker says, "Ooh, I can pick that off." And so they fill that order at 1010 and then sell it on exchange B at 1050. That's just a very basic arbitrage. That is what MEV is. Like that is genuinely all that most MEV is. It just depends on whether you're doing it versus a centralized exchange or a decentralized exchange. And there's an additional portion of it too surrounding that's basically what you hear when you hear about like LVR and things like that. That's people arbitraging dexes against other dexes or centralized exchanges, and the losses are basically opportunity cost losses. As you can see, like I didn't take money from you, the LP. What I did was I stopped you from making profit you should have made if the price did go up to 1050. So it's not like direct like theft, it's opportunity cost loss. Secondly is the idea of like front running and back running with like sandwich attacks. Sandwich attacks are fundamentally like, I think that's where it gets a little gray. Like I don't personally run any sandwich attack searcher bots, partially for this reason, because it's number one, it's really competitive, but number two, this is where it gets a little gray, where like I can actually give Scoopy the benefit of the doubt and say like it might actually have some legal implications, because front running and back running is illegal in some cases in TradFi. It's much harder to do. Different legs. Like this is why you don't really see sandwich attacks in TradFi, because TradFi uses order books for everything. Sandwich attacks are exclusively an AMM phenomenon. My thread really was about shit talking AMMs, frankly, because I hate AMMs because they're the biggest scams in crypto. Maybe besides like literal rugs, like it's like rugs, and then AMMs right behind it. The reason I say that is like AMMs were like preached of as this like new financial primitive where like, oh, we've solved trading. Like this is the greatest trading apparatus ever. And then you look and you see like, me, like Mark Richardson, the head of Bancor, or now Carbon, and I both like kind of did I took his research and kind of extrapolated it to today. It's like, if you LP'd on the ETH USDC pool on Uniswap, when Uniswap was launched, today, since the launch of Uniswap v3, the LPs have lost something like $550 million or $600 million to this. Sorry, Sita.
No, I was just shocked.
Yeah, it's like close to $600 million in IL. Like these are like complete like this is trash. And then you hear like, I'm not going to call names or anything like that, but like,
So are you looping? Sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but are you looping virtual AMMs in that as well?
Sorry.
Are you looping the virtual AMMs in there as well?
Oh, you mean like where they say they act like they have liquidity in the pool, but it's really like I mean
basically.
It's the same problem, right? Like it's just you're just adding like you're just dumping lighter fluid on the problem, Like I mean, I don't know. I don't really have a bone to pick with virtual AMMs. Like they're trying to make it. They're trying to bootstrap liquidity without having liquidity, right? Like, so I do get it. Like I'm not gonna. I mean, it is the same problems, right? The problem I more so have. So virtual AMMs haven't really taken off, right? Like they've been. Like some of them have kind of gotten TVL, but none of them have ever gotten as big as Uniswap, right? And then you have people in that community who like write academic papers that say, oh, by the way, you can LP on Uniswap, and it is always profitable. They said in an academic paper that LPing on Uniswap is always profitable. And I'm like,
who said this? Who's spreading this information?
I'm just gonna say it came from a reputable VC firm. They have since retracted this, but like that's the kind of stuff where I'm like, whoa, like where there's smoke, there's fire, my friend. Be careful. So yeah, my thread was like just to synopsize. I had like 4 points on it. One was like breaking down how MEV isn't theft. Like it's just stale price arbitrage. Number 2 is that MEV is inevitable. MEV is not inevitable. MEV is a problem with AMMs. If you look at every single example that is cited as like a problem of MEV, it's entirely a problem of AMMs being taken advantage of because of either stale prices or because of the ridiculous curve mechanism, the constant product, or even in some cases like a unique product or unique curve that the entire purpose is to like continue. It's the the constant price function to maintain the price based on the ratios of the assets in the pool. That has been like a disaster because if I know your strategy before like it actually happens, like I will always be able to front run you or back run you. Like that's kind of a huge issue. And then number 3 was like maybe one where I'm like, I feel like I might be my most controversial take, which is that flash loans are good. I actually think flash loans are an amazing tool because flash loans democratize the ability to have capital. Flash loans mean that if you find a profitable trade, you as like someone who has no money can borrow the entire TVL of Uniswap in one transaction, which is just like, to me, that's so beautiful. It's like so elegant and so cool. And so I think it's ridiculous to be like, this is a bad thing because like, some hackers use it occasionally to like make a hack go faster. Like the hack was inevitable regardless. And like, as we've seen with, the curve exploit recently, even if you do have flash loans, it doesn't mean you're going to get the trade. Like a MEV bot might front run you, So I'm kind of, that one's like maybe where I'm a little suspicious. I actually like flash loans a lot. And then they suggest some alternatives and whatnot, but I actually think there's only one alternative to AMMs or to like MEV in general, which is to use may I swear, use a fucking order book. Like it's not that complicated. So yeah, okay, that's my rant over. Thank you.
This is great. I think there's a lot more to discuss there. I want to jump into more about Aori. Kind of, you talked a little bit about how it came to fruition. You and I think was it Wyatt that kind of worked together on this?
Yeah,
Can you just give some more details on what you guys plan to accomplish?
Yeah, Wyatt's my homie. Shout out Wyatt. Cleveland gang. So Wyatt and I were in Denver. I mean, I guess maybe to answer about like what we're trying to accomplish. Like what we're trying to accomplish is like to show that to kind of red pill crypto on just how bad AMMs are designed and how like Unity 3 is not the solution. Unity 4 is definitely not the solution. Uniswap X isn't even the solution. The solution is something that looks more like CowSwap or like Aori, like like 1inch Fusion. I really want to shout out like a couple of really good protocols because like I don't want to just be like known as like a shit talker. I really want to like call out great projects like 1inch Fusion, 0x protocol, and like their RFQ system, CowSwap especially. Like these are spectacular protocols that understand the problem. You have to. I think for crypto to proceed to even ever be able to compete with TradFi, what needs to happen is an abstraction of all of on-chain activity to settlement, right? And like this is the goal of L2s, right? Where L2s try to move all compute to a higher layer and then have the settlement occur on the L1. But you find that there's a lot of protocols like lending protocols or like even like AMMs, for example, where they try to cram everything into the base layer, into the L1. And I think that when you do that, you're going to have tons of structural problems like we see with MEV right now. MEV is an externality of trying to shove everything on chain. So I believe that like future protocols need to look like CowSwap, or they need to look like 1inch or 0x, where you have an off-chain infrastructure layer that is centralized or decentralized. There's a lot of ways to do both. And then move all of the settlement and the logging to on-chain. So what I really love about like order book protocols like Aori or like CowSwap or even like 0x is that you move all of the critical infrastructure surrounding trading and latency off chain, and that allows you to basically free traders to know what price they're getting filled at, what price that they're expecting to get filled at, and you don't have these crazy weird side effects like sandwich attacks or things like that, where a user thinks one thing is going to happen and another happens. That's really the goal of like what I want to see gone in crypto is unintended consequences or a user not getting what they expected. That's why I love limit orders so much. And like every protocol I'm complimenting, the thing we all have in common is that a user has X amount of token A and they want Y amount of token B. And it's very straightforward. They either will get filled or they will not get filled. There are only two or binary outcomes. And if it doesn't occur like that, then there is something fundamentally broken with your protocol. And that's what I really want to see happen in crypto trading. So
yeah, that's awesome. And Aori is building what you guys say. I've kind of first heard about you guys as an options trading protocol, but like diving a bit more, you guys are trying to do a lot more than just that, including like spot trading and just OTC settlement. What does that product rollout look like, and why options and not perps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we started off kind of, I'm a big fan of like, when you realize you need to change something, just change it and just rip the Band-Aid off. So we initially were like, let's build the best options trading protocol possible. Cause that's kind of my favorite asset class to trade. Options are awesome. I'll kind of go into why in a little bit later, why options are way cooler than perps. But I was really, really interested in like building, a great options trading venue and an options trading protocol. And I started looking around at like what that would mean for like the options token side. I feel like we really nailed, and like we'll be showing that off later in the future. But I feel like the part that we couldn't quite nail that I was like really disappointed with was the trading of them. Like the only solutions were we launch an L2 and we charge people gas to make and cancel orders like on chain. Like there's a lot of on-chain CLOB L2s or L1s you guys have probably seen. I think that is super flawed as an idea because you're basically punishing and taxing your best users. Your best users are your market makers. They're the people who are going to be placing limit orders. And if you're charging them a fee of gas every time they make and cancel orders, you're always going to have a ceiling on how much liquidity you can attract. The other option was AMMs. And I was like, that's a non-starter, for the reasons we spoke about a minute ago. They're just so exploitable. OPYN actually, an amazing options protocol. They tried to do this with AMMs, with Uniswap actually, when they launched, and their biggest hurdle was actually getting people to trade the options on AMMs. Most people just decided to trade them like OTC, so they would like have Telegram channels and trade the option tokens like in Telegram channels and things like that, just doing direct transfers. And so we were like, well, crap, we really have to figure out how we're going to do the trading venue side, how we're going to actually handle the trading. And coincidentally, we went to ETH Denver this year in April, and we started hacking with a couple friends. And we were actually doing kind of like a fun NFT idea for our project. And I started going through the Seaport code base, and I was like, oh my God, these guys have it, and they don't even know it. Like, OpenSea built the greatest smart contract suite in crypto, and then like just didn't even use it for anything for like more than 1% of its potential. So if you go look at Seaport, like maybe I should give like a quick like 30-second on Seaport. Would that kind of work?
Yeah.
Sweet. So Seaport, for you guys who don't know, you probably used it a million times. It's the smart contracts that are behind Blur and OpenSea when you go trade on them. So anytime you approve a transfer or make a trade or buy an NFT, you're using Seaport. Seaport is this really beautiful, cool protocol where they built the most gas efficient transfer mechanism using signatures. So whenever you go on Seaport and you actually make a listing, you notice that you don't pay gas. You notice that you press the signature button, and then what happens is OpenSea or Blur stores your signature and the information about your order in their database, and then whenever a taker comes along and wants to fill that order, the taker is provided that signature and the order details, and then they can sell it directly on chain. So it's completely peer-to-peer. OpenSea doesn't actually hold your NFT or anything like that. They just hold the order, and then they show it to everybody in the world, and everybody in the world gets the ability to fill that order. That's kind of the core idea of Seaport. What I didn't know, and what no one really has documented about Seaport, is that it doesn't have to be for NFTs. Everybody knows that you can trade an NFT for an ERC20 on OpenSea, but no one knows that you can trade just tokens for tokens. Like that's kind of like an undocumented feature. And it used to be that if you actually tried to do that on Seaport, if you actually tried to do that using like an SDK, if you're like a developer, it would block you from doing it. It would actually like cancel your trade before it even got submitted. And so we had to like edit that out of our SDK that we could actually do it because OpenSea tried to block us. So we ended up removing that checker, and boom, worked amazingly. And we ended up doing some more cool engineering on top of Seaport that we'll publish about later, about cancellations being gasless too. Because like on OpenSea right now, whenever you go trade, if you cancel an order, you have to pay gas. We were like, we can't even have gasless cancellations. We want this to be so cheap for people. And so we kind of did some really cool engineering around that. But yeah, that's Seaport. And so, once we stumbled upon Seaport, we realized, holy crap, like we need to just base our entire protocol around this and then just build on top of this. So we are launching Spot first. So that's whether it's a private transaction like between two people, OTC wise, or you actually want to trade high frequency spot, you can do that in our order book. So yeah, that's kind of the high level of kind of how we got to where we are today.
Would you, just out of curiosity, like, are you guys like the first one to take this smart contract suite and apply it to something other than like an NFT marketplace, or has this been attempted or done successfully before?
No one has ever tried, to the best of my knowledge. Again, I could be totally wrong. Somebody could show me like some protocol with 10 followers on Twitter that tried to do this like 3 years ago. Like I would not be shocked, but to the best of my knowledge, no one has. The closest that anyone got was OTC SudoSwap. If you guys remember that back in the day, they used to do like bundle. They were like doing bundle transactions for bundle transactions using Wyvern and Seaport. But no one, to the best of my knowledge, has ever done like spot swapping through Seaport, especially not like in an HFT setting. Yeah.
Mm, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting to see, how that applies then
Mhm.
in a different case. Going back to like, I guess like options more broadly, you alluded to how you're kind of like an options maximalist, it sounds like. Can you talk a little bit about like why you prefer them and what you could envision as like a turning point for on-chain options to start gaining more traction, at least like relative to perps?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think options are going to take a long time and may actually never pass perps in volume in crypto. Um, there's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest being the like when I get asked a lot why I think options haven't taken off like perps have. Um, and I think the main reason is you have to think about like use case. The reason options are so big in traditional finance, like even let's go back to before people started gambling with like 0 day options and things like that with like GME and AMC and whatnot. The reason options always have done like 100x, 200x the amount of volume that perps have done in TradFi or futures. Right, there's no perps in TradFi. Futures, quarterlies, and whatnot is it's because options became a big market in like the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s when people who had stock in companies wanted to use options to hedge or lock in their bonuses or their company dividends and things like that. There were real structural reasons why people who were parts of companies wanted to do things like sell covered calls against their stock positions, right? Like they had real structural reasons why they wanted to generate consistent income from their stock balance or their stock portfolio. So there was like a real demand for it that you couldn't do in futures. Like with futures, it's really hard to manage a position where you're constantly having like if you're trying to take advantage of like a funding rate, right, where you're going to get paid by being long spot short futures, that's only like a seasonal thing. That's only something you can do like intraday, right? Like you have to monitor that position like for huge amounts of time. But if you just sell a monthly covered call, like you press one button, you forget about it. Like it's super easy, and you have cash in hand that day. So it's great for you. That's why options were like so active in TradFi, and so as a result, all the market makers started trading options because there were structural flows in these options that there weren't in futures. Futures really made sense for TradFi only in commodities markets where you had like you were trading like live hog futures and things like that, and you were actually trying to lock in and buy these things, or if you were a farmer, hedge them. So that's kind of like why there was like a divergence in TradFi. In crypto, it's really straightforward. There's one reason people trade perps, and I think everybody knows why. It's gambling. You're gambling. That's it. You're a degenerate. It's occasionally legal to use things like Rollbit, so you want to gamble. That's it. So it's really hard for the options market in crypto to take off when, unlike in TradFi, crypto does have structural like option sellers. It's token protocols, like it's token treasuries and things like that. But the problem is their markets are not liquid enough that they could actually handle people selling options. Like if people started like openly selling like 10% or 20% of the supply, the outstanding supply of a token in options, that thing would go to zero the next day. It would get shorted so fast and it would get blown out. Or it would rally and just crush everybody. But like vol would spike. So I think that's kind of why you haven't seen options take off, is because like there's not like the gamblers have realized like perps are like the best gambling mechanism, and options are kind of not great for that. So, but I do think as crypto markets kind of mature, you're going to start to see options become a really valuable hedging instrument for like VCs, long-term holders of token projects, community treasuries, things like that. So they'll be like a very pragmatic solution. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny. People like crypto native people don't realize that like trad futures often are like they look very different from what we're used to. Like relying on the delivery of like an actual asset is like completely changes the entire process of what you're doing. Like it changes the type of person who would do it, the way you would use it. Whereas like, when you really take a step back and look at what we're doing, like a lot of it is just pure gambling. So it's like, it's interesting how like options are kind of more similar to their TradFi counterpart in crypto. Kind
Yep.
of creates like a different market for them, I think. Um, okay, so getting into uh, Aori specifically. Um, so remind me again which chains you guys are going to be launching on.
So our goal is actually to be really chain agnostic. We want to be live on. We kind of want to be a base layer tool on any EVM chain for like native trading of assets. That's why like we have a global order book, for example. So if you make an API call to our order book, it actually queries every chain. So you can actually see every chain in real time. So like we're really like trying to lean into like the multi-chain aspect of it. Yeah.
Gotcha. And that order book, what is that going to look like on day one? Like who's going to be managing and upkeeping that? And is that process going to change over time? Like, is there a gradual decentralization process like we've seen with some other projects?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. So maybe just one real funny like note on your point about perps and options real quick before I jump into that. You just reminded me of like one of my favorite green texts ever from 4chan is this guy was like, guys, I made a ton of money. I went long egg futures on the CBOE and there now I made a bunch of money. I sold about 80% of my position for a profit, but I have these guys calling me, telling me I need to take delivery of 40,000 eggs. What do I do? Like, and so like, I'm just like reminded like, man, if only that actually happened in crypto, like you'd see a change really fast. Like I have to deliver 20,000 ledgers with 0.05 Bitcoin to your house right now. Like, oh my God, I would die laughing. But, so sorry, forgive me. Could you repeat the second part of your question? I had to amuse myself with that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I've definitely seen anecdotes like that before, and it's hilarious. The question was, what is the order book going to look like from day one? Like, who is going to be managing and upkeeping that? And is there like a gradual process of decentralization involved?
Yeah. So the first part about the parties involved. So we really see the order book having two main parties day one, and these are kind of the people we've been going after on the sales side. So the two main parties are like for the searcher community and the market maker community. So like the market maker community almost plays like second fiddle here. The number one citizen on our exchange is the maker or the searcher. So searchers are people who do math, to put it super simply. So we have a really cool feature on our exchange that like I feel like a lot of people are going to get freaked out by, which is flash market making. And this is another reason I'm very pro flash loan. So we're the only exchange ever that I'm aware of that you can make an order. So like you can make a limit order that is completely backed by a flash loan. So whenever you could have no capital and you could sign a flash maker order. And what happens whenever you sign that order is what happens is a taker can come fill your order, right? So you post a maker order for $1 million of ETH, and a taker comes and takes that order. What happens is the taker signs a mirror order on Seaport to your original order. You take both of them, and then you, the maker, go and pay the gas to settle that order. But when you're settling the order, you can do any arbitrary logic you want on chain with that. You can fill a liquidation on Compound. You can borrow a flash loan and fill that order. If you have your own capital, you can arbitrage a centralized exchange versus a decentralized exchange, in the same trade. There's so much potential for what you can do with that trade, including like what we expect most searchers to do is open a flash loan, fill the order, and then purchase back their flash loan across every DEX that they're connected to. This is effectively very similar to what happens on CowSwap. It just allows a taker to come instead of a maker. Like CowSwap, you sign a maker order, and then all of the solvers find the best route for that trade. We allow people to say, we want all of the solvers to compete in the public for providing the best price quote possible. And any user can come to our front end and say, I want to fill that order. Instead of them having to post a blind order that then gets auctioned off to the solvers. So that's kind of how our order book works day one. So, we've been joking internally that like, if we get enough solvers, like we could have like $100 billion in limit orders that are all backed by flash loans, like in our order book, which is just like fucking ridiculous to say. Like it's kind of really ridiculous. It's going to be really funny if it happens. But yeah, so that's kind of the number one citizen. And then another counterparty that I see as like being really, really active on Aori is market makers who are not as big as like the Wintermutes and the Jumps of crypto. So if you go look on chain, right, like most SexDex arbitrage is done by two firms, Wintermute and Jump. That's about it. Like almost no one else. The reason for that is it's so capital intensive and it's so human capital intensive as well. Like you have to have a centralized exchange team. You have to have a ton of capital on a centralized exchange. You got to have a block builder. You have to run your MEV team. It's really a lot of work. But if you have something like Aori, then you as a centralized exchange liquidity provider can just simply quote us prices like you would another centralized exchange on our API. It's super straightforward. So that's kind of like the idea there. And so what I mean by that is like a market maker can provide a price quote to us that's like, identical to what they're quoting on Coinbase or Binance, but they add like, 2 or 3 basis points of profit, right, from the spread or as a spread. And a searcher can come along and say, oh, I want that. I can then arbitrage that against Uniswap or, SushiSwap or any on-chain DEX. And those two firms working together, the searcher and the centralized exchange liquidity provider, have all of the pieces needed to compete with the big block builder searcher arbitragers. So that's kind of who we see being the most active users on the protocol day one. And your last point about decentralization, we effectively see this as like we see Aori, like the public order book, as being very similar to like a sequencer, except it's a sequencer that you don't have to pay gas to use. So it's just as centralized. It's just as decentralized as Arbitrum or Optimism. We have some interesting ideas surrounding decentralizing the order book in the future, or decentralizing at least the validation of it and the more of the execution. But I really like having our product be just a big public queryable database. Like to me, that's really beautiful. Like I like that as like a concept, more so than kind of like creating a fake L2 that like we put all the orders on the L2 just so that we can claim we're decentralized, even though we're really not. Like I much prefer being honest with our users. So that's kind of my take on it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's definitely valid compared to like, building like an op, not to say that this is a bad or a wrong approach, but building an op chain or some sort of like L3 on Arbitrum and with the intention of making an order book on that chain decentralized one day, like there's no real like timeline for that yet, if we're being honest. Like it's still kind of just in the distance, a very murky goal to get to. I do think it'll happen, but
well, you run into this issue of like if you put it on a chain, right? Then don't you have to pay gas to trade?
Right. Yeah, you incur a bit more expenses in that scenario,
like
but
already a non-starter. Like it for us as a product, like one of the things we immediately were like, we can't have this is paying gas to trade. Like paying gas to make or cancel is already like that's like a line we can't cross. Yeah, because there's been like a million on-chain collabs and they all suck because like you have to like pay gas to make. Like, are you kidding me? Like what? Like I'm very against it. But there are ways to decentralize it. Like you can decentralize a database. Like that's been done before. It's just a matter of doing it really fast. That's the thing. Yeah.
It's interesting to me how part of your day one focus is essentially attempting to like broaden the funnel of viable market makers who would really get use out of a product like this. We spoke to Drift last week, which is a perp exchange on Solana. They have a decentralized central limit order book or decentralized limit order book, a VAMM, and then like a JIT like front running liquidity mechanism essentially. And um, one of their like core ethos is essentially
Ethi?
reducing reliance. What's that?
I said Ethi.
Ethi. Yeah, I was gonna say that, but it didn't quite didn't quite sound right. One of their core beliefs is trying to reduce reliance on centralized market makers and kind of like decentralize or democratize the opportunity for everyone. And it sounds like you guys have a similar idea, but like a bit higher up. So like instead of making things easy for everyone, let's just like work from the top echelon. Let's make it so winter mute and jump aren't the only ones capable of really running a profit here. Do you see do you see this process of like opening up to smaller market makers? Do you think that that is going to extend to users one day as well? Like, are they going to be able to come in and market make in some way that's just as profitable as a winter mute or jump, or maybe not as like capital intensive?
Well, there's like a couple points there that are like really interesting. So, yes, to the last point, like I think one of the first products we're launching on Order is basically Yearn or like enzyme style vaults where you can run custom strategies using capital in those vaults. So this is basically allowing anybody who doesn't have the technical understanding of like a sophisticated market maker to LP into one basically. We've even like joked about like doing a vault that's just replicating an AMM curve, like literally just replicating like a Uni V3 style curve with limit orders in our book, like just to like say that we're even better than that. But like I definitely want there to be like it's a big feature to me to have like vaults where people can LP into, and then we can actually claim that we have a better passive solution than like a Uniswap does, for example. I don't think you're ever going to be able to match all of the P&L that like of a sophisticated trading firm like that, because it's their full-time job to find opportunities. Like once your starting point is I'm a passive LP or I'm all in. This is my full-time job. You're at a huge disadvantage. So I think like the best you can hope for is like getting a percentage of it, and so that's kind of what I see as like an attainable goal. And on like the Drift side, like I really like Drift Protocol. I'm familiar with them quite well. I think their solution is definitely better than any ETH AMM just because they're on Solana, right? Like they have such fast block times. They have such a more high performant ecosystem. Like it's much harder to do like MEV on Solana than it is on like ETH mainnet or something similar. So I mean, but I don't know. I'm a bit out of left field in crypto in that I'm actually not anti-centralization. I actually think the best things in human history have come because of centralization. Almost nothing good has come from decentralization historically, outside of the decentralization of technology. The decentralization of technology has led to like some of the greatest human advancements ever. But like the decentralization of institutions has not. Like, democracy killed Socrates, the greatest fucking philosopher of all time. Like, are we going to act like this is always a good thing? No. It's situational. If you have a brand new technology like a blockchain, for example, that makes sense to decentralize because it's effectively a super powerful technological institution that can be used by anyone, and that's really beautiful. That was kind of Satoshi's whole point. But like products built on top of that blockchain can be centralized. That's fine. I think that's actually like generally a good thing. That's why 95% of trading volume in crypto is still on centralized exchanges because it turns out people actually care about like user experience. It reminds me a lot of like if you poll people and you ask them like would they prefer a great subway system in their city or do they want to have a car? everybody on the poll will say they want a subway system. They want they want to have like the Singapore or the Tokyo subway system. But there's something called revealed preference that shows that like in reality, no one votes for it. No one cares about it. All they want is their own car where they can have the peace and quiet of being by themselves. Like they don't want to have to deal with screaming people on the subway. Like it's crypto's the same way. Everybody shouts decentralization, but like then everybody trades on Coinbase, so I actually think the UX is far more important than the degree of decentralization. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I do agree with you that like there are certain layers where decentralization is definitely not nearly as important as experience or throughput or some other factor. And in a lot of cases, pretty much past like consensus or like the base layer. It's really difficult to make the case for that. And it's also very much just like a virtue signaling thing at this point as well. Like people trying to boast that for their, new Rollbit competitor or whatever it is. Like it's, just doesn't make sense. I do I know we're like a bit short on time here, but I do want to get back to your thoughts on AMMs specifically because it's I haven't met many people who are so starkly against them, so I'm curious to get more thoughts on that. Definitely. I guess like so. First of all, you mentioned that like you don't think AMMs are the future at all. You think it's like a toxic system in one way or another. I guess first of all, we were talking about LP profitability and like how much money has been lost doing that. And I don't remember who it was that said this. It might have been Hayden from Uniswap, but there was some podcast where he was talking about UniV3 LPs and how like on average, bulk of them lose, but they continue to do so. They continue to LP. And like we don't understand why that's the case. I'm wondering if you've like heard that anecdote before, and if you know why that is the case.
Yeah, I mean,
because I think that's a very overlooked question.
Like, it's not even like debatable. He has to, it's so funny that he even has to like he acknowledges it, like because like it's okay. To answer the first part of your question, AMMs are not the future. AMMs will be. I think there will only be one within 5 years. There will only be one place where AMMs still have dominating market share over order books, and that in DeFi. And that place is low cap new tokens. The only reason is the only unique value add they have over any other any type of order book or order flow auction is in brand new markets where there is no liquidity provider, where there's no professional market maker to come in and run that book for a token project, right? This is why you see like every project launches first on Uniswap, and why you almost see no MEV outside of some sandwich attacks in those low liquidity tokens. That's kind of the big reason why. So I think AMMs will have a future there, but that's the only space. Like all mid cap and high cap tokens, AMMs will inevitably lose. And it's just simply a fact because of stale order arbitrage. When you LP, you are saying, I promise that at every point in time, I will always be here to take the other side of every trade. You'll pay me fees because of that. That inevitably, though, leads to at any time, like the amount of volatility almost perfectly correlates to the amount of impermanent loss. So the more volatility there is, the larger the price swings, right? The more arbitrage opportunity there is versus centralized exchanges, which leads to more arbitrage that picks off the LPs. And what I believe it was, I don't know who said that quote. It could have been Hayden, it couldn't have been someone else. It is correct. There's an amazing paper I recommend everybody check out. It's by the guys who are now at Ambient, formerly CrocSwap. On their Medium, they posted like a 4-part series doing analysis of impermanent loss on UniV3 and UniV2. And man, is that some of the most jaw-dropping research I've ever seen. It's spectacular. I cannot recommend it enough. Go check that out if you have like an hour to kill and you want to learn more about this. CrocSwap's Medium. That's where you go look. And one of the things they noticed was there's actually only one type of LP that is profitable. It's someone who only LPs for less than one block. Like, wow. Like holy shit, wow. Like that's one of those sentences where you read it and you just go, so this is all a sham. This is all bullshit. Like you realize like this system is inevitably money losing. And what it shows is the only people who make money are just-in-time liquidity providers. And specifically they identify that like guys like Arrakis, guys like that are doing JIT liquidity providing, those are the only ones who are able to be profitable. And the reason is because unlike every LP, they are monitoring the incoming order flow and saying, okay, I can take these XYZ orders and I will not take toxic flow in. I can see what all the orders are going to be that I'm going to fill, and then I'm going to pull my liquidity out immediately. And I know that the fees that are being paid in this block are larger than I'm going to pay in gas to do this trade. And that's the only reason that just-in-time liquidity works. And when you realize that like just-in-time liquidity is exactly the same as an on-chain central limit order book, you're like, holy shit, like it all makes sense now. What I mean by that is just-in-time liquidity providers are doing the exact same thing that a on-chain CLOB market maker does, where they see order flow coming in the mempool, and then they systematically only provide liquidity to fill those specific orders. That is exactly how an on-chain CLOB works. So Uniswap, like the only profitable users on Uniswap are not even using Uniswap as intended. They're using it like accidentally as an order book, which is kind of really weird to think about. So that's kind of my like whole take on like AMMs. I think AMMs are cringe. I think like they're bad, and anyone who like is shilling AMMs these days is like you know, generally speaking, trying to mev you. So stay away. Don't LP. Yeah.
That's a pretty generalizing statement, because AMMs are a huge part of crypto, obviously, and like
right now.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, I do think that there is efforts to improve LP profitability. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know how effective they'll be, but I'm not speaking to like the automated strategies necessarily. Like I don't really buy into that, but more so like more tailored exposures to a given asset with like a weighted balancer pool. Like I don't know that like an 80-20 like balancer ETH pool would have no impermanent loss or no loss for the LP.
They
but
definitely still do. Yeah.
It would definitely have less, I think. So it's a step in the right direction. Or like Trader Joe's, I forgot what it's called, but they're like, or like Maverick. Maverick is a better example, probably. They're like move strategies for different bins. Like I do think there's steps being taken in the right direction.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, sure, they're mitigating it, but like, you know, it like let me give you a real life example. If I shot you in the leg and you were bleeding, and then I put a Band-Aid on it, that would be mitigating the bleeding, wouldn't it?
Sure.
Okay, well, that's kind of how I hear all these IL like mitigation strategies. I mean, you know, you were shot, my friend. You need to go to the hospital. You need to stay away from guns. Like you don't need a Band-Aid, you know. So that's my take.
That's an interesting analogy. It's funny. It's not like a lot of what you're saying sounds very similar to like a debate specifically within like AMMs, which is the like traditional AMM versus the VAMM debate. And like we talked about this with Drip as well, which was the idea that like given that VMMs have sucked so far, like there hasn't been a good one. It's essentially just been like a stuck pig. Um, but like Z was pretty adamant that like, you know, given that it's still a new technology, we like need more time to try and implement it the right way. Like it is like aligned to try and have this system that allows you to bootstrap from this early on without having market makers or an insane amount of liquidity. So, you know, don't like throw the baby out with the bathwater, basically.
Wait. Can I test in one thing? So what
Yeah.
you're saying is we need to add fake liquidity, and I'm not like dissing the fake liquidity part. I promise. That's actually fine. The problem is you're trying to turn your good AMM into a bad AMM, right? Like I was talking about earlier, the only places where you don't see MEV are low liquidity AMMs, right? Like low liquidity pools. And you're trying to synthetically add more liquidity that doesn't exist there. So isn't that just like turning it into a bad AMM where you could get arbed and like crushed via IL more?
Yeah, well, and that's and in the case of a VAMM, that loss is usually taken on by like by the insurance fund or by whoever is backstopping the AMM. That's the problem with those is that
Yeah.
all of that stress is taken on by one party. So like it's, you know, as opposed to everybody getting 1,000 cuts, it's just the protocol getting slashed to hell and having to you know pay out of their pocket to clean up bad debt. But you know, given that it's like a new thing, given that there are like more creative ways to think about it, they're still optimistic there. I realize we have like 3 minutes left here. Are you cool with going over by a few? Just because we do want to get back to Aori.
Yeah. I got a couple. I can go over a couple. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Thanks for that, by the way. That's definitely very interesting. I have this ambient paper pulled up over here. I'm going to take a read on these later today.
Yeah, they're the ones who actually like crop. I mean, he's a controversial figure, absolutely. But yeah, shout out to FBI Femboy and Doug over there. They do amazing research. I don't love. I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like they like. Oh, sorry about that. I feel like they. Forgive me if there's loud noise.
Okay.
I feel like they managed to identify the problem, but like their solution is only like partially, you know, a solution. Like they're kind of in the mitigation strategy with hooks. You know, they're the guys who really created AMM hooks or like popularized them with ambient. So I think like, again, it's like if your goal, like, I've seen a lot on Twitter recently about the mitigation of IL. Like that's been a big thing, you know, the panoptic, you know, the whole, we're going to buy options so that we can, you know, hedge our IL and things like that. And like, or short LP positions and things like that. And I'm like, all right, I get it. Like, I see what you're trying to do. Dynamic fees, things like that. But like, again, my bullet hole analogy. It's like you just need to stay away from guns, man. Like that, you don't need a better bandage. Just go back to what actually works. Like, so that's kind of my my take on it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Like even the panoptic version doesn't even make that much sense because you realize like all you're doing is hedging your exposure. There's no guarantee that you're even going to make as much fees as you're paying the hedge. Like because you're having to buy options on panoptic, like with like these IL hedging protocols. You're buying options, and if an LP position is fundamentally short options, it's short calls and short puts. That's what IL is. But if your goal is just to buy options, you're trusting that the fees that you're being paid are as much or greater than the cost of the options that you're purchasing, or else it's a profit or it's losing money. I don't think there's almost any scenario in which, outside of crazy high volatility, that your options that you're paying for are going to be cheaper than the fees you're being paid. I think that's like never going to happen.
Well, I don't think you're necessarily. I mean, I guess in a way you are purchasing options on Panoptic, but what you're really doing is just paying to borrow an LP position. Like it's just throwing.
You're paying to short an LP position.
Right.
Yeah, because you're short options already. You're going long. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially. Sorry, we do have to swing back to Aori here.
Oh
We
yeah,
want
yeah,
to
no,
we
you're
want to
good,
try.
you're good.
This is
Yeah.
great stuff. This is definitely very interesting.
Nah, I could talk.
Uh,
I could talk all this all day. You're good.
I can tell. Yeah, I would definitely love to hear more, but we are on a schedule, unfortunately. So you talked a little bit about your take on like the importance of decentralization, like especially at the application level.
Mm.
And I know Aori has a bit of a different model when it comes to governance, specifically like the seat slash token model.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about like what went into that decision and kind of like how it works, what the difference is between the token and the seats?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm like if anybody's familiar with the term like LARPing, like live action role playing. It's when you're like a nerd that like dresses up at like Ren fairs. I'm a LARPer, but not for like weird medieval shit like that. I'm a LARPer for like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange of like the 1970s or 80s. Like to me, that was like the coolest period of trading history ever. Is like the stock exchange floors. Like, I mean, this goes for any stock exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, the COMEX, the CME, the CBOT, like they're all like the same. Like these trading floors where you had a nonprofit exchange be the core of your exchange. The way these nonprofit, like most people don't know that stock exchanges used to be nonprofits for years, like for almost 150 years. Yeah, yeah, it's like this crazy like Wikipedia fact you have to like dig like 300 lines deep into find. But this was like a core feature of how all stock exchanges worked. Like the way the New York Stock Exchange was founded was a bunch of dudes got under a tree, a bunch of brokers, and they were like, guys, we need to stop competing with each other. Like we're killing each other. Like why don't we like create a collaborative nonprofit where we agree that all the members aren't going to screw each other over, and we will let other people, if they want, pay fees to trade with us. And this was where the modern stock exchange comes from. The way it worked was you had members who owned real estate that was literally like 3x3 square floor seats at stock exchanges, and they all had collective ownership inside of a corporate entity that was a nonprofit. The nonprofit was basically just the governance mechanism, and the seats were like a way to become part of the governance class of the exchange. And the way it always worked was if you trade with your counterparties on the exchange, if you trade with other brokers on platform, then you will pay no fees. If someone from outside the exchange comes in to trade, they will pay fees to whoever their broker is. This is like why Robinhood has like a Series 7, right? Like you can trade through Robinhood and Robinhood won't charge you fees. But like, back in the day, Charles Schwab would. It's the same relationship that, you used to have like a specialist on the floor who you'd call to fill an order and things like that. So that's kind of what we tried to emulate. A non-profit exchange where the seat holders own the exchange, they own the protocol, they govern it, and the token holders are effectively like the overarching governance structure that handles everything on top of the exchange. The people who actually govern the trading, who govern everything that happens on the floor, are the seat holders, and then everything on top of that gets built later is governed by the token holders. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. The seat auction is over, right? I think it was running not long ago, but it's over by now, right?
Yep. Yeah, it ended a couple weeks ago. We auctioned. We did like 102 auctions. It was supposed to be like 105, but I'm like brain dead, and my bot didn't work, so I had to end it a little early. But yeah, it ended there. It's yeah, they're trading on OpenSea. We've done like 15 ETH in volume. They're quite fun. I like the seats. We have a great community on Discord that's like super active in the seats world. Yeah. So the seats are like the cool way to earn like zero fees. Yeah. Apologize. I do have to go in like just like a minute or two if that's all right.
Yeah. No, that's fine. We're gonna
Telegram.
Gotcha. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up right here. Just if there's anything we missed, any last like comments you wanted to put out there, anything you wanted to shill, now would be a good time for that.
Yeah, just check out Aori. We'll have some announcements pretty soon surrounding order and surrounding everything like that. So yeah, thanks for letting me come on and rant for a little bit. I appreciate that a ton. Yeah, we should
Awesome.
definitely.
This was awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna
Thanks a
for
lot.
everybody too who wants to hear my annoying voice. We're gonna have a town hall. Once orders live, we're gonna start doing like weekly or bi-weekly town halls that everybody's invited to. So
Is there a timeline set on anything yet? That was the
yeah.
last question.
Order will be dropping very soon. Very soon. We're gonna do like a 2-week beta. So if there's any smart contract developers or Rust developers listening, just get ready. We're gonna have some cool bounties coming out too. So yeah. So probably you can expect to hear about or see the test net very soon. So yeah. I'm quite excited.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so
a
much,
lot,
guys.
man.
It was a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. That's the episode. See you guys.
Peace. There's a lot of